This week, we are going to work on responsive web design. We've already learned Flexbox, which is a responsive design. And this week, you are going to learn how to use CSS Grid View. And you're also going to learn CSS Grid. Now, the names sound similar, but they are not the same thing. So there's grid view and just grid, okay? And so to kind of separate these in your minds and to keep them straight, I actually split the lecture demo into two parts. So you're going to start by reading the book that'll give you an overview on responsive design. And then you'll go through part one, and then you'll go through part two. And the textbook assignment has you completing exercises using both layouts. And we will take a look at that as soon as we look quickly at the two different lectures. So part one is grid view and also mobile web. And pretty much most of what you're going to be learning as far as what responsive web design is CSS oriented. It's things that you do in CSS to make the pages responsive. And kind of the primary thing that you need to think about as far as responsive design goes is mobile first. So you should be designing for the mobile device because if it looks good on mobile, the idea is that it's going to look good on all of the devices. Okay, so this is just kind of an overview. We also talk about what a viewport is, and that is basically the visible area of your page, and how to use the meta tag with viewport. If you don't include this, what happens to some of your pages when you view them on a mobile device is they become teeny weeny and it's impossible to read any of the text. Okay, kind of like this example. Okay, and then if you put the viewport tag in, they look normal. So this document kind of goes through a lot of general information on mobile design. Pay attention to the relative lengths, okay, because these are all mobile friendly. Okay, and then if you're kind of curious, like, well, how do these affect your text? You can see that I actually used some here in this example. So you can kind of see what they look like. And as far as the layout goes, the grid view layout has been around for quite a while, and it basically divides your page into columns. Okay, and so you have like 12 columns within a single row, and the total width is 100%. So if you kind of look at it that way, if you wanted 3 different sections and they were all going to be the same width, you could kind of look at it as each section is 4 columns. Okay, so I've got an example here, and if you wanted to see this outside of the lecture demo, you can certainly go in here and you can see this is mobile friendly. Okay, it expands, it contracts, and it pretty much looks the same. And then we get into how to build this responsive grid. And this CSS is classes that you would apply to your tags in your HTML. And you pretty much can copy and paste that. Okay, so make sure you read through this and you understand what this CSS is doing. Then we get into media queries. So sometimes when you have set up your columns, uh, things don't look quite right on particular devices. And what a media query does is it lets you change the display for different devices so that it'll look better. And typically, the way you do that is you specify a maximum width. So here at media only screen and max width 480, I can see if it's 480, it's going to be for a mobile phone. Okay. And you can see that for all of the column classes, we set the width to 100%. Because a format like this doesn't translate real well to a mobile phone. So we just make everything 100%. Okay, and that's done through a media query. But you can see that media queries also can look for different orientations, okay, which is helpful on mobile phones as well. And so as you go through here, you can see that we've got the grid view set up. And it's the default here is set up for mobile with a width of 100%. And then we are looking for tablets, and then we're looking for desktop computers. And then this would be how we would apply it in our HTML. We also get into printer-friendly pages because when you set up a page to print, people don't want to waste their ink, so they don't want to print out all of your graphics and all of your colors. So the printer-friendly CSS basically tells you how to take all of that out, only for printing. Okay, then we get into images and how to make those responsive so that they adjust in size as well, how to make videos responsive, okay, and finally how to market your page. So that's all in the first lecture demo. The second lecture demo gets into CSS Grid, which is newer. Okay, CSS Grid is a newer responsive format. So this basically goes through the different ways of using CSS Grid. It is more complicated than Grid View, and that is why I kind of separated it out into its own lecture demo. I like CSS Grid, but the way I use it, because there's all sorts of different ways you can use this. As you can see, you've got a grid container, and it has a bunch of items. Okay, and you can lay things out by row or column. How I like to use this and the advantage I see is by using the template. And in your exercises, I actually have you do that. But in the template, what you do, you're still using classes and you are defining different grid areas and associating them with a class that you'll put in your HTML. And then you have something called a grid template area where you lay out those grid areas. And so I really like this format. It's very visual. Like you can actually plot it on a piece of paper how you want things to display. So you will learn how to do grid view first, and then you're going to learn CSS grid. And just in case you're wondering, yes, CSS Grid can be used with media queries. In fact, it's super easy to use it with media queries because you're basically using the templates and the different basically names that you're assigning each area, and you're laying them out. Okay, and again, it's also easy to do printer friendly using CSS Grid. So after you go through both of those, then you're going to get into the textbook assignment. And so for the textbook assignment, you are going to be using both Grid View and CSS Grid. So you'll start with that Acme page that we worked on. I believe it was menus in lesson 10. So you'll copy it and paste it into your lesson 11 folder. And then you're going to be modifying the Acme vertical CSS for Grid View. Okay, and then you'll have to go in and modify the HTML and add your column classes. Then you're going to download Zen, which is a bunch of pages that I set up for you. And you are going to set those up using Grid View as well. And you'll have to modify those pages. Then for your Zen page, you're also going to have to create a printer-friendly CSS page. And make sure that when you add the link for printer-friendly, that media is set to print. And you should also have your other link there as well. There's going to be a link to the regular CSS where the media is going to be set to all. And then you're going to have a link to the print CSS where the media is set to print. You need both. And so this actually gets rid of the colors and all of that. So it's strictly for printing. And where the print CSS is activated is in print preview. So if you press Control and P in pretty much all of the browsers, it takes you into print preview. Then in that same Zen sequence, you are going to be inserting some attributes for SEO. And we do that in meta tags, but we also do it in alt text. And it helps these pages come to the top of searches. Task 6 gets into previewing your pages on a simulated mobile device in Chrome. You can also simply resize your screen, but this is actually pretty nice. A video kind of walks you through how to use it. And then you're going to go to task 7. And task 7 gets into using CSS Grid. So you're going to download another site or another set of pages. It's basically Dr. Seuss quotes. And I set up some examples here. So this is just a graphic showing you kind of how your mobile grid should look when you view it in mobile. This would be how your tablet view should look. And this is how the desktop view should look, just so you know if you've done it correctly or not. Okay, and then here is the code. And because I do like the template, that is what I'm having you guys use. And then this is kind of how the HTML should look. Now, once you finish that, you'll have an idea of how Grid View and CSS Grid work. And then you're going to go into your lab assignment. And in the lab assignment, you are going to create a page on any topic that interests you. And for your final project, you will be able to actually use this page as part of your final project, or you can do your final project on something completely different. But I do allow students to use this page as a starting point, so keep that in mind when you are creating this. And if you're looking for a page to model after, the Zen sequence is nice. You could also model after the Seuss sequence. I also have a couple examples. I did one in Grid View and one in CSS Grid. And for this particular assignment, you are going to set your page up using either CSS Grid or Grid View. You do not have to do both. You just have to pick one or the other. And you are going to have to set it up for printing as well. Okay, so you're going to pick one of the new responsive formats that we learned, and you're going to set it up for printing. So if you want to see my examples, okay, so this example, as you can see, it looks different as we change the page. This will do basically the same thing. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Okay, and this was done using CSS Grid. This was Grid View. And if you want to see the codes, you can see I've got the screen and the print CSS. But you can click on those links and see them. If you want to see what the print CSS does, press Control and the letter P. And you can see I pretty much stripped out all the color and the graphics, which is what print CSS should do. So that is pretty much the assignment. And as I said, you can use this as a base or a basis for your term project. Then finally, you are going to showcase your responsive page in the discussion forum. And again, who is the audience? What is the purpose? And how did you decide on the design and the layout? Okay, then you're going to review the other students' posts and reply to one of them. So if you run into problems or if you have questions this week, just let me know. And I am really excited to see what you guys create.